Joining me today is the man that I have dubbed the Willy Wonka of politics. It even says so on the back of his book right here. Michael Malice, welcome back to the Rubin Report.
Good to be back again, Dave.
We have a lot to do, my friend. Now, most of it obviously is going to have to deal with your choice of wardrobe and general persona and being. You've really done it this time.
If I had a
with
nickel,
this jacket and the pendant.
This is actually the same thing that Johnny Depp wore, but it's a W for him. Now it's an M. And
now it's an M for Michael, although if you flipped it upside down, it would be a W for Willy then.
For Willy Wonka,
There you go. That's actually the one. I didn't see that one.
It's not. That's the better one.
What?
It is. It is the better one. Yeah.
You're going to tell me that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp is better than Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder.
And I'm not trying to be a contrarian, not trying to be provocative. It's much better.
I haven't seen it, but there's no way it's better.
Well, it's pretty good. I'm telling you.
How could it possibly be better? You're telling me he was better. He was better than Gene Wilder. That's what you're telling me.
I'm in a position to make this call.
I suppose at some level, because of the great honor that I've bestowed upon you by calling you the Willy Wonka of politics. But I just don't think anything could possibly be better than Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka.
You watch it and tweet out the answer.
This is a really disturbing start to this thing. Okay, so let's do this. So first off, I'm going to do this interview completely in a different way than I've ever done before, which is that you may notice I have no notes here.
Okay.
Now, my policy is that when it's a good interview, I don't have to look down once. But I thought, you're so bananas. Your political theories are so out there. I thought, I'm just going to sit down and completely see what happens. I am literally not going to write down one thing beforehand. So the reason that I call you the Willy Wonka of politics is not just because of your high fashion style, but you actually do strike me as a unique political thinker, which is pretty freaking rare these days.
Well, that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
That's all I have for you.
Okay, good show. Let's go to the movies.
No, all right. So, but you really do, and even the way you tweet, the way you use trolling, you know, your out there political thoughts, all of those things. I mean, the way you present yourself, it's all like just this really bizarre package. So for people that didn't see our first interview, just give me Michael Malice 101. Let's just get the history out of the way, and then we'll go into the new right and the topics of the day.
The glib answer is he's the boy you hate to love. The longer answer is my background is with North Korea, was my last book with Dear Reader. The new right happened as a consequence of so many of my friends who were trolls, who were anarchists, fell down these rabbit holes of what was called at the time neo-reaction, and later became like the alt-right and dark enlightenment. So I watched this scene from the build up from the ground floor, and then to have it culminate to some extent in the Trump presidency and contemporary cultural wars, I had a bird's eye view. So I knew someone was going to have to write a book about the subculture. And I also knew that, you know, any reporter is not going to be able to understand this scene, because at the very least they're going to be an outsider. Secondary, they're going to have their own, you know, prejudices. So since my job had been to make North Korea, you know, before I started my North Korea work, the idea was they're crazy. And crazy means I don't understand you. It can mean I don't understand you, it can mean that you're random. But now everyone understands North Korea is not crazy. They have a very coherent, logical approach to their evil dictatorship. And the same thing with this scene. Everyone would like to dismiss it, lump everybody in. They're all nuts, they're all Nazis. And it would be really convenient if you could paint everyone with the same brush. They'd be a lot less efficacious. It'll be a lot easier to dismiss. But that's not the way it is. And people understand that any subculture, even the left, you know, for the Republicans, they think, oh, the left's the same. The Hillary Clinton hate the Bernie people. They really hate them. So there's a lot of different groups in what I call the new right. And often, though they're united in what they regard as their opposition to progressivism, between them, they do not have much agreement.
Okay, so with that as the backdrop to all of this, and this also explains why when BuzzFeed and HuffPo and Vox and the rest of them are writing about you guys, whatever that collective thing is, they always get it all sort of wrong because, as you said, they're not part of it, so they just look at the, oh, they must be racist part.
Well, they also have an agenda.
Yeah.
So racist means that which is against progressivism, and I have a list in the books of things that have been called racist, which includes moving into minority neighborhoods and moving out of minority neighborhoods, noticing races and not noticing races, milk, certain types of dinosaurs, I mean, picnics.
Wait, so, what type of dinosaur is racist?
There was, in Jurassic Park, one of the dinosaurs was called racist. I'm not sure exactly why. I didn't follow reading through the article. Yeah, so I don't know. And possibly, what's his name? Fred Flintstone's pet.
Oh, Dino.
Yeah, he's a bit of a white supremacist, just between you and me.
Good
Yeah, it's
God.
unfortunate. So I thought someone has to write this book, and also it's a dark space, so I wanted to have people be able to explore it in an interesting way and in a non-threatening way.
Okay, so for people that know nothing about this, the couple groups that you just mentioned there, Dark Enlightenment, the troll community, all of this stuff, can you just kind of break down all of it? How did this start? How did you even start caring about it? Were you part of it? What the hell's going on there?
I was on
Because even for me, and I have some basic understanding
Sure.
of this stuff, I'm actually not totally clear on all the sort of markers and where everybody is online and all that kind of stuff.
So it starts, I ground it in 1992 when Pat Buchanan, who is regarded as a paleoconservative, teamed up with Murray Rothbard, who was regarded as a paleo-libertarian. So between those two men, you basically have everything that is happening today within this scene, meaning nationalism, trolling, flirting with racism, contempt for authority, skepticism toward the establishment. The two of them had many disagreements. And at one point, Pat Buchanan turned on Murray Rothbard, and later he asked Murray Rothbard's executor for forgiveness, literally getting on his knees and asking for forgiveness. I broke that news in the book. And that has come down to contemporary terms where the internet, what social media allows, and this is both a positive and a negative, is back in the day, if you were that one person in your town with these weird fringe views, you're the freak. But now that one person with their weird fringe views in that town can talk to the other person with their weird fringe views in the other town, or in Denmark, or in Asia.
Or can put on a purple jacket and show up at the Rubin Report. It's all very bizarre.
No, they can't pull it off. You have to earn this jacket.
Yes.
So, but now they have a community and discussion, and they can develop an ideology. So what I saw happening as a result of hanging out with the trolls is people falling into this group called, what was called at the time, Neo-Reaction, or the Dark Enlightenment. And it was things like, we need to return to monarchy. America is this decadent Weimar Republic that's on the verge of destruction.
But where was this happening at
On
first?
the internet, it's all on the internet.
No, I know, but like where?
What do you mean?
Forums, chat rooms?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like,
Forums. There are all these blogs. You
Yeah.
know, it's very H.P. Lovecraft, things you're not supposed to know. Especially, it was blogs, not really Twitter at the time, and Facebook groups. Those were the big ones back then. So this would have been about like 2013, 2012.
Okay. So now some of this stuff starts bubbling up.
Right.
And you start seeing these communities that sort of don't really align, but have some weird touch points.
And
what do you make of those touch points?
Well, what I knew from my, I'm a big pop culture person, obviously. And I knew how culture develops, which is it starts at the fringe with the weirdos, and then the edgy people, the cool people, like, hey, have you heard about this thing? Then it becomes more mainstream, and then like kind of the nerds get it. Then the corporations appropriate it and kind of tone it down, right? So all the intellectual momentum I saw on the right was a result of this stuff. These are the people talking ideas, both nefariously and positively. These are the ones asking the big questions, and basically the radical questions. And one of the big differences between conservatives and New Right is this. Conservatives take what is given, and this isn't a slight against conservatives, and regard it as, all right, basically what we have, how do we fix it? The New Right often has a more radical approach, meaning just because something exists doesn't mean it can't be destroyed completely and started from scratch. So these are two different approaches, and we see it regarding the press. I got into an argument with Sean Davis, who writes for The Federalist, and his whole point is that the media, they're all dumb. And my point is, no, these people are very, very bright, and if they're all making the same mistake in the same exact way, that is not a function of stupidity. Stupid people aren't all going to agree. This is a function of something more nefarious. So
it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Correct, because they do have a certain specific agenda, and everyone has a certain specific agenda. So this is a big separation between conservatives and New Right. Is this part of society salvageable, or is it inherently impure and beyond redemption?
So when Trump was being elected, I had Eric Weinstein sitting in that seat, and what I said to him was, what most people seem to want is a panther in a china shop. We know something's wrong with the system, but we don't want to blow up the system. We want a panther to walk in there and knock something off with its tail and bang one thing off with its head, and then close the door behind it, and a couple things will have broken, but we'll be okay. But there's no such metaphor as a panther in a china shop. It's a bull in a china shop, that you just can't get it. I sense that a lot of what you're talking about is these people want the bull in the China
No,
shop.
these people want a bomb in the China shop. They want the China shop to be destroyed. And the phrase China shop is pretty apt here because it's talking about foreign influence in America. China's not their big villain specifically, but basically the idea like this store needs to be torn down. We're not breaking some dishes. We're way past the point of breaking some dishes.
But they want to blow up the whole store too.
Right.
It's not just about breaking the china that's in the store.
Correct.
They actually want the entire structure to change.
And salted the earth, yeah, to make sure nothing can be built there again. For some,
So where do you fall on that? Because I sense there is this weird thing of there's this weird thing on both the left and the right. The left seems to really want to destroy the whole thing too, in a weird way. But then you're talking about people on the new right that want to destroy the whole thing. They want to destroy it for different reasons.
Well, what do you think the left wants to destroy?
The left wants to destroy capitalism, and they want to destroy the basic way our democracy has functioned and things like that.
I don't know that they want to destroy capitalism so much as they think of it as something that can milk and harness. Bernie, has some vaguely positive things to say about capitalism, and I don't know that they would ever admit that.
Well, I think it's a slow slope to get there. Sure. You don't just come out day one and say you want to destroy capitalism. You just keep undermining it over election after election.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying is the new right is saying yes, we want to destroy this. Chapter 4 of this book is called The Case Against Democracy. So in this scene, there is a huge question of how is it that democracy is inherently good, let alone inherently legitimate.
So lay out a case.
Sure. So people say that communism works in theory, not in practice, right? Well, that doesn't mean anything because everything works in theory. That's what theory means. Practice is how you figure out if something actually works. Democracy is one of the few things that doesn't even work in theory, and here's why. They talk about voter turnout being a good thing. Well, at what point does it become legitimate? If 70% of people vote, they can speak for the 30% who don't vote. What if it's 40% vote and 60% don't? At what point is it that you can say this group of the population can dominate this other group who haven't voted? That's one example. But in even more technical terms, the purest, I use an example from this book called The Machiavellians. The purest exemplar of democracy is the town hall. You have a bunch of people, everyone's there to kind of speak their mind, put their point of view across. Even in a town hall, you're going to have limits on time. You're going to have an agenda, what issues we're going to discuss. So even in the most democratic system moment, you're going to have an elite setting the rules and boundaries. So one of the ideas behind the new right is this old school theory 100 years ago called the circulation of the elites, meaning Hillary Clinton will always have more in common with George W. Bush than she will have with the janitor, and you can't get rid of an elite so much as replace it with another elite.
Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of the way Game of Thrones ended, sort of.
I'm not that much.
Oh, you're not a Game of Thrones.
Sorry,
okay, okay. There's a funny moment at the end where they're trying to figure out how to rule in the future, and one of the guys says, "Well, what about democracy? Let the people vote." And there's a moment where you're like, "Oh, are they going to end with democracy?" And then everyone laughs.
Well, there was another new right moment early on because didn't some person hold up like a piece of paper that says "You promised," and they basically ripped it and laughed, right? So this idea that the Constitution is somehow going to start working and save us is another thing that they're very skeptical of.
So what are you politically, if you had to give yourself a label?
Sure, I'm an anarchist without adjectives.
An anarchist without adjectives?
Yes, sir.
Explain the adjective part of that to me.
There's different schools of anarchism.
Yeah.
And I'm more, there's anarcho-capitalism, there's anarcho-syndicalism, anarcho-communism. I like it all. My point is essentially is that government is not legitimate. It cannot be made legitimate, and you have to start with that recognition. Now, some people think, okay, if you take away government, everyone's going to be equal. You're going to have wage equality. Some people think, okay, it's going to be hyper-capitalistic. Sure, I'm a lot more comfortable defending anarchy than I am defending capitalism or communism or syndicalism.
So, I think most people hear anarchist and they just think, well, I say this all the time, it's just you want to end up in Mad Max. You just want sort of warring factions constantly trying to take each other out, and that there is no sort of social cohesion, there's no way to build big projects and things like that because we don't have something that's sort of bringing us all together. That the government is kind of sucky. I mean, a lot of people think this. It's kind of sucky, but it's the best we got.
It's the best criticisms of anarchism are actually descriptions of the status quo. Meaning, what you're describing is the status quo. You have governments who are trying to take each other out. China has, hacked our systems. Russia, is interfering in our elections. So, right now, nations have a state of anarchy with regard to each other to some extent. What anarchism would do would provide more security because you wouldn't have to have a government monopoly. The idea that you need the government to kind of build a big project is really not necessarily true. And if anything, the government is probably the biggest hindrance towards people working together because they have to run things through some bureaucrat who has no accountability.
Okay, but wait, I want to back up before we go too down that road. So just break down a couple of these other groups that were sort of in this trolling community. And can you just explain, like, for someone of a certain age that really doesn't even that's not on Twitter and then not on 4chan or wherever else is going on, or Discord, like, what is actually going on with the trolls? Like, what is the goal of the troll?
The older people actually know trolling quite well, because the example I use in the book, the first troll was Andy Kaufman. So Andy Kaufman...
Right, he was the great troll of all time.
The great troll of all time. He was on Taxi as Latka, which is not what he's proudest of. And he would do things like, he had this character called Tony Clifton, who's basically this like old lounge singer in a pink salmon blazer, and he'd come out and sing terribly and just berate the audience. And one most trolling moment is he was performing, I think, in Atlantic City, and he says, oh, you know, my wife died a few years ago, and when I look at my daughter's eyes, I see my wife, come on out here, honey. And she sits on his lap, and they sing, and her voice cracks, and he slaps her across the face, and he goes, what the hell are you doing? And the audience is booing, and he goes, oh, don't boo, you're just making her cry more. Well, not only wasn't his daughter, it wasn't even a child, it was an actress. So trolling, correctly, is forcing a party, exploiting a party's weaknesses in order to turn them into an unwitting performer. So other examples of this, there was a little kid, this little autistic kid, was on The Late Show in the UK or Ireland, and they asked him, hey, what do you want to do? Huey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he goes, I want to fly planes into buildings. And the guy goes, what? He goes, I want to fly planes to skyscrapers. And he's like, okay, if you can't do that, what would you want to do? I'll move to Iraq and be a terrorist. Now, it's this little 10-year-old boy, and the host now doesn't know what to do. And he's put on the spot. That is trolling. Now, trolling is often used on the internet to be like being a jerk. That's not, to me, a definition of trolling. There's plenty of words for that. And just going up to someone saying, you know, you're this or you're that, that's not clever. Trolling is an art. So
so how is it that Trump understood this, do you think? Because this is where people say, well, he's just an idiot, he just says whatever he wants, there's no filter, and it's like, if that really is the truth, then everyone else must be hyper idiots. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't accept that as the truth. Which, perhaps.
Let me give a great example of Trump trolling.
Okay.
Again, trolling meaning you're forcing someone to become a performer by exploiting their weaknesses.
Which it seems like now all the media has become, and all of his enemies have become. He can get them to take any position on anything.
Here's the perfect example.
Yeah.
For 1 year, he's yelling at Elizabeth Warren, take a DNA test, take a DNA test, take a DNA test. She takes it in secret, doesn't even test for Native American blood. It says she's at most 100,024th. She releases it, and she goes, ha, Mr. President, I took the test. And you know what he goes? Who cares?
Yeah.
So now she's made a fool of. He is not at all engaging with her, and she's left. You can even hear the Curb Your Enthusiasm music playing as she talks. And this woman has become a broken woman as a consequence of him clowning her so thoroughly.
What is it about him that you think made him understand this? How did this guy understand this psychological trick, or whatever you want to call it?
There's two scenarios, right? Scott Adams, who I know you've had on, describes the Lucky Hitler phenomenon, right? That somehow it's just he always manages to say that what he needs to upset people. The other scenario is like there's some kind of Rain Man thing going on, that he just sees people's weaknesses, he knows exactly what to say, and despite themselves, they lose their minds. Another example of this was, I think it was Pixelated Boat, there's some Twitter account, and they made this fake screenshot from Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury, about how Trump watches TV all the time, and the staff at the White House made something called the Gorilla Channel, and he talks to the gorillas on TV, and he says, oh, that gorilla's good. And people, and it was clearly a joke, it was meant to be a joke. People repeated this like, oh my gosh, Trump is so dumb, he talks to television. Like, wait a minute, you could think he's as dumb as you want. You're telling me this man who's 70, who's had a TV show, doesn't understand that you can't talk to gorillas on a screen?
Right.
But that is the level that he's driven them to. So it's hilarious to watch. And it's beautiful from the anarchist perspective, because he's delegitimizing the political process and the presidency. So the reverence that people have for the presidency has deadly consequences, because it allows them to get away with things like war. And if you think the guy in the Oval Office is a clown, and that clown is getting ready to send your kids overseas to possibly die or possibly kill people, you're going to be a lot more skeptical.
God, there's a lot there. So you think
it's a whole book worth?
Yeah, if only someone would write a book about this sort of thing. There's a lot there. So you think in an odd way his behavior is delegitimizing the presidency, let's say the office of the presidency, or more broadly, government in general, and you ultimately view that as a good thing because you don't think that really has legitimate power to begin with.
Right. One of the big views of the Murray Rothbard school is that the two political parties are literally rival gangs. And just like a gangster has the nice rings and the suits, they wear their suits, they go to the Senate, but these are at base murderers who are plotting, fighting with each other, but it's infighting. So anytime the mask is dropped and you realize these people are stealing your money, they're trying to control your lives, they're causing massive, harm around the world often, that's a good thing.
What's the racial element that comes out of all of this?
Because
for as much as I get a lot of this and I like a lot of the trolling, the good-natured stuff that's really getting the people that I don't like to flip their lids, like I love all that stuff.
Sure.
And then there's this other piece of it that that strikes me as, it's hard to tell it. Are they just intentionally inflammatory? Do they really believe this? What kind of power do these people have? Are they coordinating all of that?
Yeah, so Jared Taylor is the head race realist, right? These are the people who view racism as the most important issue, the alt-right. And I interviewed him for the book. I went to his house, and even he was confused. And there was this great moment. He's got this very weird accent. He goes, "Are you telling me these people really believe this Hitler stuff?" Like, he couldn't wrap it. And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "The idea in this day and age that Hitlerism would be a model for America is simply fantastic." And I go, "You mean crazy, right?" He goes, "Oh, yes, thank you for the clarification." So even in that group, though, they're the racists, but he is, pro-Jew. Then you have the people who are full-blown anti.
What does that mean? So they're the racists, meaning there are just people who just...
Full-blown racism.
They just actually are racist. They want people based on the color of their skin to have different laws or not be in this country or...
Correct. And they say, if you don't see that as the most important issue, you're blind. Mm-hmm. So I, had to engage with that writing this book. Then they're the ones who are, everything's about the Jews. The Jews, the Jews. When I was in Charlottesville, I saw everything happening. I couldn't go to all the events because my contact was told, "Don't bring the Jew to the party." I was not wearing the blazer. So there is this whole subculture, and they disagree with themselves, and it was important for me to engage with them and express what their point of view is and show how they're wrong. Because what happens is when you drive people to the margin, it's like telling, and especially when dealing with young males, it's like when you tell kids, if you smoke, the principal, your parents, and everyone's going to get upset, and then you can't get a Pall Mall fast enough. So that's the same thing here. It's like if you talk to these people and say certain things, people you hate are going to get upset. It's like, sign me up. Mm-hmm. So the point I make in this book is you take one red pill, not the whole bottle. Because once they realize that the corporate press is often dishonest and has an agenda, they fall down this rabbit hole. And unless someone grabs them by the collar and it's like, yeah, you don't have to go all the way. We can stop right here. They're often lost.
So this is, you would argue then, the reason why censoring these people and suspending people on Twitter and booting people off Facebook and the rest of it is actually the worst possible thing that you could do. Right?
I don't know if it's...
Because you're just feeding it. You're just feeding
I don't know if it's the worst, but if they're going to say there is an elite agenda designed to drive us underground and keep the truth from coming out, now they have evidence. Look, we're being blocked. They don't want to hear the truth. So that is, and the fact that David Duke, for example, is still on Twitter is very curious to me. And again, with the internet and technology.
So wait, what do you think that's about then?
Well, I think David Duke is a very useful foil for the left. Because when he endorses people like Keith Ellison or Ilhan Omar, it's crickets, right? Mm-hmm. But when he says something positive about somebody else, like, oh my God, David Duke
about Trump,
about Trump, yeah. I don't think he likes Trump too much because all of Trump's kids, except for one, married Jews. So he's not that fond of the president. Everything's about Israel, David Duke. And I trolled him once on Twitter, so that was a fun moment.
You took out the Duke?
Well, I don't know if I know I did. He's still there. And that's the problem. Like, why is David Duke there while people like Laura Loomer aren't? I mean, that is a very odd situation.
And you would say that really is just because of the power dynamic within Twitter or within something bigger than that? Or?
I can't speak to why. I'm not inside Jack Dorsey's mind.
Yeah.
I do think there's something here that's not adding up. And I think the more transparency, the better. And I think Jack on some level would agree with that.
Yeah. What's your position on what to do with the tech companies at this point, related to all of this and the censorship and everything else?
I think the solution is going to be just like back in the day we had OkCupid, and now you have Tinder and all these other sites, and they separate out. There's no reason everyone has to be in one site. So the more, if Twitter wants to say, we're a site for progressive ideas, they have that right, and that's perfectly fine, they're going to lose a huge market share, because when you drive out fringe ideas, whether evil fringe, you're also going to be driving out the good fringe idea, and that's where innovation happens. So if you're going to have this bourgeois, middle of the road, I don't want weirdness, you're going to lose the interesting people also. So this is a very big double-edged sword.
So then why hasn't this problem been fixed? There's enough people frustrated with it all over the political map. Good old classical liberals are just as frustrated as perhaps more nefarious characters. Yeah, and nobody has solved this problem.
But your frustration might be a feature, because they say, look, we're obviously doing things right. We've got Dave Rubin upset. So if we live in a culture that's heavily dominated by the progressive ideology. So for them, if they're getting certain people upset, they can say, hey, we're doing our job right. The euphemism they currently use is the quality of the conversation, right? So, I mean, this is the most Orwellian thing ever. Like, you're going to be judging quality, so it's which is a very different thing from free speech, which is messy and ugly and often reprehensible.
How do you think that the new right then is supposed to? I know you don't like boundaries and you don't like gatekeeping and any of those things, but how do you think
I like gatekeeping.
You do like gatekeeping.
I like gates. I'm not an inclusionist person. I'm very much for freedom of association. If I don't want to talk to someone, I block people liberally.
But all right. So, but in a wider group outside of just what's happening in your mind and your interactions with people, how do you think that this new sort of group of people that are all over the map politically, right? How do they keep the fringe people, the truly bad people, out of the way? This seems to be the biggest issue.
Yes.
That nobody's solving.
I don't think you can, because technology has made it. It used to be you had 3 networks, right? ABC, NBC, CBS, and between the 3 of them you get the news. Then Drudge came along, I was talking about in the book, and the networks are like, he's not legitimate, he's not legitimate, he's not legitimate. He breaks one of the biggest stories of all time, Monica Lewinsky. They didn't know what to do. He's not legitimate, he's not legitimate. It's like, he broke news. Who are you to say he's not legitimate? So this orthodox idea of legitimacy has no inherent meaning other than tribalism, right? So once you have technology, and thanks to Twitter, Facebook, whatever, everyone has their own mic, and there are more and more mics being built every day, I don't see how you're going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle.
So you just have to let it be then. You'd say there's just no option, it just is.
Correct. And you have to engage with bad ideas if you want to diffuse them, because you're not, thanks to technology, you're not going to be able to censor anyone. Let me give you another example. I have this in the book. Let's suppose it's like 1990, right? And you're having an argument about censoring books. And one guy's like, we need to censor books like Mein Kampf, it has bad consequence. Someone else like, no, you need to hear free speech. I come from 2019, teleport back in time, and I say, look, someday you're going to be able to copy a book infinitely at no cost. You press one button, you send it anywhere on Earth at the speed of light for free. I would sound like a lunatic, but that is the status quo. Oh, and also you need a magic word in order to read it, a password. Oh, okay, crazy person. Yeah. That's the status quo. And technology is only going to increase more and more and more to empower the individual at the expense of big conglomerates. It becomes cheaper and cheaper to make your voice heard. Back in the day, you'd have to be like, if you don't like it, make your own network. Well, you did. Now it's going to be, I mean, I remember,
except we're still using their pipes. I'm still dependent, at least for the moment, on their technology.
There's a great book called The Goal. And the point of this book is, what's a goal? What's the goal of a business? And he says, to make money. So how you do this is, you look at the pipeline from conception to production, and you look at what's slowing up your profits. So maybe you don't have enough shipping boxes, maybe you're not producing enough bottles, maybe you have too much warehouse inventory, so you got to have more marketing.
Maybe YouTube's not sending your videos out to your subscribers.
Right.
Okay.
So you look at what the issue is, the bottleneck, you fix that. Once that's fixed, there's going to be another worse thing, and you fix that. So Twitter, in many ways, is a rearguard movement right now, because people are realizing it's PayPal, and it's the banks, and it's the fact that there's domain registrars. Those are the next 3 that people are going to build alternatives to, because that's where banks are shutting down accounts right now, and that's what's being underreported. So Twitter is kind of a little bit of a distraction, because you'll always be able to make some rival to Twitter. Banking and PayPal, that's what something people have to look at now.
And do you think the right people are looking at it?
I
people in your world, are people looking at it?
I don't think this is an ideological thing. I think it's just some entrepreneur who sees a market opportunity to be like, PayPal is being arbitrary, and I can compete with them on some level. All it takes is that one guy, and then the battle is won. And then there's going to be another battle. It's an asymptotic situation.